the Madman. Welcome to the top 10 cards that are going to be in Titans. Starting off at number 10, Ignis the Eternal Flame. This is a card that I worked to put into a number of my control decks. I think that running only 2 copies of a forge card, of one singular forge card in a draw heavy deck can be enough to justify running Ignis. Most of the time, a 5-drop weapon is good, but if you're up against the control deck, the 10-drop could actually be incredible value. In the theory craft testing, I crafted a weapon that would give me a 80 plus amount of health while also dealing 30 damage. Number 9, Gear Shift. I think Gear Shift will be in a lot of rogue decks, perhaps all of them. Drawing 3 when your hand is empty is, of course, a really good use for it, so a strong buff to tempo decks. But also, for decks that just want to cycle their cards, it's often that the cards that you aren't able to play or aren't relevant end up getting stuck in your hand on the left too. Gear Shift can shift those out. An amazing option for pretty much all rogue decks. Number 8. While I don't think Control Warrior will work out, where I really think the Warrior is going to shine is in the BlackRock and Roll deck. What I picture is a mix of the BlackRock and Roll deck as well as Amalgam Warrior, and the only spells you're going to run are Roaring Applause ×2 and 1 BlackRock and Roll. I think that's going to be ludicrously strong to have Steam Guardian able to draw you exactly Roaring Applause or BlackRock and Roll. And if you draw BlackRock and Roll by playing Steam Guardian on 3, you can play BlackRock and Roll on 4 and then buff nearly your entire deck. That BlackRock and Roll deck is essentially the first deck that I think could be tier 1. Any card that's from here on up, you can expect that I basically think that that card will be in the tier 1 deck. Number 7, always a bigger Jormungar. You've probably seen Hunter running Hollow Hound, but what if you didn't just stabilize by using Hollow Hound? What if you actually killed your opponent by playing Hollow Hound and then playing always a bigger Jormungar and then trampling over for a bunch of damage while also healing yourself? Always a bigger Jormungar plus Hollow Hand is going to be the classic Fool's Mate move from Hunter, and if you're up against the Hunter, you are pretty much going to have to not play small minions, and certainly not many small minions, on any turn where the Hunter can play Hollow Hand plus always a bigger Jormungar, otherwise they're just going to kill you. Number 6, Disciple of Eonar for Druid. This card, I think, the package is really good. The idea is simple, and I think this will be a package that's run in a number of Druid decks, be it the token variety, where you flood the board and then you cast your drum circle, which has both sides to it thanks to Disciple of Eonar, or it could just be Hero Power Druid, where you have a bunch of big, powerful cards in the middle, such as Disciple of Eonar into Nourish or into Drum Circle, and then the backup plan or the main plan was to hero power you down the whole time. What Hero Power Druid was missing was better cards, essentially, and this choose one package where you get both sides of a choose one card while having incredible choose one cards. I think this is a really good late game payoff for Druid. Next at number 5, for Demon Hunter, we have Jotun the Eternal. I think this card, alongside Runic Adornment, brings back ye old Relic Demon Hunter. Relic Demon Hunter basically was capped on how much power it had because you could only get so many relics out. Well, Runic Adornment and Jotun the Eternal push that bar just a bit higher, and I think in doing so, it makes Demon Hunter into a tier 1 deck. Number 4, I had to think about which Shaman card I was going to put here, because this is the type of package that just goes all together. But the Flash of Lightning is the lightning that precedes all of the other madness, where you flash, and then the turn after, you play your Champion of Storms, you play a few lightning spells, summoning a few guys, you play your Bioluminescence in order to give your entire board spell damage +1, and then you cast a bunch of lightning spells, or a bunch of damage spells at your opponent's face, and then one turn kill them. So this is, by the way, the big reason why I don't believe that control decks, the traditional style of control, slowly outvalue above those control decks which don't have a way to one turn kill your opponent, are the control decks that can one turn kill your opponent or generate an enormous amount of value over time. Like, not just this incremental small value, but real big value. Which leads me to the other major deck that I think destroys the control decks, the traditional control decks, which is number 3. We have Sif. You've played with Malygos before. Fortunately, Malygos costs 9 mana, but Sif only costs 6 mana. And you've got a card which basically is a double cast in Molten Rune. So if you just combo Sif with spell damage +7 with Molten Rune, then for 9 mana you've dealt 20 damage. All you have to do is throw in another 3 damage to do the full 30 damage one turn kill. There's a lot of different ways to deal way more than 30 damage with Sif, but one of the big examples would be with Infinitize. You can generate cards, damage dealing spells that cost 0 mana. So there are a lot of ways to do a lot of damage, and there's a lot of control tools that get you there. For example, Inquisitive Creation, number 2 on the list. Inquisitive Creation and Sif go hand in hand as why this control deck works. Sif is the game closer ender. Without Sif, Control Mage would be doomed, but you wouldn't be able to get there if not for Inquisitive Creation. Inquisitive Creation is an incredible 4 mana board clear while also providing some board presence. Why does Inquisitive Creation already be good after you've only cast 1 spell? But you're actually going to cast many schools of magic, and you're really going to have this 4 mana deal 6 damage to enemy minions. I think Control Mage will be really stable, and the reason behind it is Inquisitive Creation. Inquisitive Creation gets you to the end so that your Sif wins the game. You needed both. You needed the game ender in Sif as well as the board stabilizer in Inquisitive Creation in order to be a good deck. We've got our honorable mention here. It's mildly amusing to give Odin 3 stars. Control Warrior is going to be tier 3 because it is outclassed by other control decks, such as Control Warlock and Control Priest. And while Control Priest and Control Warlock outclass Warrior, I sadly must give Sargeras the Destroyer 4 stars and Aman'Thul 4 stars, and this seems criminal. However, I just simply think that these control decks have a huge weakness to them, and that would be infinite value generated by Hero Power Druid, which will kill the control decks eventually by hero powering and hitting you for 5 or perhaps 7 a turn. Relic Demon Hunter, which will summon a bigger and bigger man, and the bigger man is something like a 15-15 and a 16-16. But how are Control Warrior and Control Priest and Control Warlock ever going to beat the 1-turn kill burst from Shaman and from Mage? When Shaman and Mage are also control decks, wouldn't you just play the control deck that can also beat the other control deck? So there's a lot of cool control decks in Titans, but I just think that the Shaman one and the Mage one are better. Which brings me to number 1. Golganeth the Thunderer. Like, yeah, all those other Titans, they're cool, they're kind of value, but Golganeth the Thunderer is incredible value, even if you choose the uninspired option to simply draw 2 overload cards and then you cast a 3 mana overload card. You know, you've got your 3 mana 5/7 in that case, which your opponent has to remove. Holy cow, I even misremembered the amount of cards that this thing draws. It draws 3 overload cards, not 2. And, you know, in case you don't just choose the default option of draw 3, sometimes you're up against the aggro deck, you just Roaring Oceans their board away while also healing. Sometimes you just need to kill one big thing. This is going to be rare, but you just Lord Disguise it, and you easily 2-for-1 your opponent. But really, you're going to Shargon's Wrath most of the time, and I truly forgot that this card drew 3. I just assumed it only drew 2, but apparently it draws 3. That's incredible. So there's your top 10 of Titans, and I do think this will be a very impactful set. The Control Warrior is kind of hyped, it's kind of cool. The Paladin Golem stuff, it actually looks terrible, but it's probably better than it looks. Mech Rogue actually looks pretty decent. And then you got Control Warlock and Control Priest. But there's one thing that beats control decks, and that is an inevitable win that's provided by combo decks. You know, infinite value provided by one-turn killing, or by relics, or by hero powers. So I am expecting big meta warping effects from this set. This is quite a set. The problem is it going to be warped by so much that a lot of the other new cool stuff, being a slow value-oriented theme of Titans providing a bunch of value, will that be overshadowed by the big, you know, infinite value provided by one-turn killing or by relics? We'll have to see.